Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Ashtotar Satya Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna and welcome to everybody. It's Monday, July 18th, 2022. I got a message from Jayādvaita Maharaj earlier today that he's out of station. He's unavailable to give class tonight and maybe not for the rest of the week. We think he's traveling between the UK and India, but further details are not available right now. So, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in 6th chapter. We're picking up tonight with verse 8. Maitreya speaking with Vidura. And let's see if I can post that verse for everyone. Just a moment. I'm going to get that together if I can. Thank you for everyone's patience. And if someone would like to lead tonight's closing kirtan, please send me a direct message. That would be very nice. And also, if you'd like to be on the list of those willing to speak in Maharaj's absence, please also let me know about that. That would also be very nice. So, tonight's verse.
Ekandra Prabhu,
Hare Krishna.
maybe you can turn up your volume a little bit.
How's
If you
that?
want me to, I was going to say, if you want me to find verses and post them up for you, just, you could make me a co-host and I'll share them or whatever, or put them in the chat.
I'll make you a co-host in any case.
But if you want me to find something, just tell me and I'll look for it while you're doing other things.
Okay, thanks. Yes, and please, everyone, I'm looking very much forward to hearing your comments and questions. Just a moment here.
You want to do a screen share?
You can do as you like. I'm just posting the verse as I usually do. All right. Esha hyashesha sattvanam atmangsha paramatmanaha adyo vitaro yatrasau bhutagramo vibhavyate. So, esha, this, he, certainly, ashesha, unlimited, sattvanam, living entities, atma, self, angsha, part, parama atmana, of the supersoul, adya, the first, avatara, incarnation, yatra, whereupon, asau, all those, bhutagrama, the aggregate creations, vibhavyate, flourish. So Prabhupada's translation is, the gigantic universal form of the Supreme Lord is the first incarnation and plenary portion of the Supersoul. He is the self of an unlimited number of living entities, and in him rests the aggregate creation, which thus flourishes. And his purport says, the Supreme Lord expands himself in two ways, by personal plenary expansions and separated minute expansions. The personal plenary expansions are Vishnu Tattvas, and the separated expansions are living entities. Since the living entities are very small, they are sometimes described as the marginal energy of the Lord. But the mystic yogis consider the living entities and the supersoul, Paramatma, to be one and the same. It is, however, a minor point of controversy. After all, everything created rests on the gigantic Virat, or universal form of the Lord. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistang Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What I wanted to do, just to begin tonight's reading, was to speak a little bit. This is from Burijan Prabhu's book, Unveiling the Lotus Feet. And I wanted to pull focus back just a little bit, because I always like to reacquaint myself with not only where we are in the narration, but how we got here. It helps me get a little oriented. He says, this is, if you're following along, it's on page 477. This is, the chapter is called, in Burijan Prabhu's book, Dialogue 2, Maitreya Describes the Universe to Vidura. So he says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapters 1 through 3, which is where we are at, Vidura and Uddhava have directly described Krishna's human-like pastimes. Now, to ensure that readers receive an accurate understanding of Krishna's identity, the Bhagavatam offers a glimpse of the Lord's unlimited power. And as Maharaj is pointing out when we started this chapter, and even before, when we started the canto, and even before, that the glimpse that we got between the Uddhava and Vidura speaking about the direct pastimes of the Lord is the last that we'll hear about them for several more cantos. So we're hearing right now a lot of very detailed stuff about how the Virat Rupa enters into the universe. Burijan Prabhu says some very interesting things here. He says the Vishvarupa is like a blueprint of the universe. As a material manifestation of the Lord, it cannot strictly be called his form, because his form is ever spiritual and never material. Nevertheless, the Lord pervades and is non-different from the entire material creation. The subtle material form by which the Lord pervades the universe while displaying everything in the universe is called his universal form. So from various sources we hear that the universal form is a plenary manifestation of Krishna. We also hear that it's an imaginary form. So no matter which way you look at it, he's entering the universe. And in another way to look at it, he is the universe, because nothing is different from Krishna, but Krishna is different from everything. And so we are within the gigantic body of the Lord as the Virat Rupa, just like a whole lot of bacteria and other things are within our bodies. We may be the big soul, but there's a lot of little souls there. They show up under a microscope. So we're like the little bacteria within the Virat Rupa. So we're within the form of the Lord, and again he enters every atom as the Paramatma. So we're surrounded by Krishna wherever we look, except that we can't see him because we're an illusion. It's just an amazing thing how powerful the illusion is. Krishna's within everything, he's without everything. There's nowhere you can look that isn't Krishna, and at the same time we think, oh, it's all about me. Somehow, funny enough, Burijan Prabhu continues, the universal form appears from Garbhodakashaya Vishnu and is an aspect of Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, the third of the Purusha avatars. Kshirodakashaya Vishnu both enters the heart of each living entity and pervades every atom in the universe. Thus, the gross manifestation of the universe rests directly on the Lord's universal form, which is considered the Lord's first descent into the material realm, just like Prabhupada says in his purport. It's the first, the first plenary expansion of the Lord in the universe. Just as a soul encaged in matter possesses both a subtle and a gross body, with the gross body based on the subtle, so the supersoul possesses a subtle body in the form, the universal form, and a gross manifestation of it, the universe. So, interesting distinction there between, okay, Krishna appears as the universal form, and that's the subtle form, and then the universe itself, made up of all the Bhumir, Apo, Nalo, Vayu, etc., that's the gross form. As the gross and subtle bodies ultimately rest on the soul, so both the subtle and gross features of the universe ultimately rest on Krishna's presence as the supersoul. And as we are reading in a previous verse, that the universe grows or exists or reaches its predestined size because the supersoul is in there, just like our bodies. Nothing happens, the body does not develop without the presence of the soul. So as above, so below. One of the things that I thought was very interesting about the purport to this text number 8 was that when Prabhupada says, the mystic yogis consider the living entities and the supersoul, Paramatma, to be one and the same, which is the typical, I guess, roadblock to perfect knowledge we hear about through the mystic yoga practice, that you're performing austerities and tapasya, you're controlling your breathing, you're controlling the mind, you're withdrawing all the senses, and then if you're so fortunate, you have darshan of the supersoul. And apparently it's a very easy thing and even customary, from what Prabhupada says here, for such people to think, oh, that's me. But Prabhupada says here, it is, however, a minor point of controversy. After all, everything created rests on the gigantic Virat, or universal form of the Lord. When I first read that, I thought, wait, that's actually a major point of controversy. That runs counter to our philosophy that the soul and the supersoul are actually different. And if they think that it's one, that's a big controversy. But in the same sentence, Prabhupada says, after all, everything created rests on the gigantic Virat, or universal form of the Lord. It's like if you point to your fingernail, or even something underneath your fingernail, in one sense you're pointing to yourself, but our Achintya Beda philosophy allows for the fact that there is oneness and difference at the same time. So it's a minor point of controversy, because yes, the super soul is there, and yes, the soul is there, And we're all packed up together in this gigantic Virat Rupa. Everything created rests on the gigantic Virat, or universal form of the Lord. Vijay Krishna Prabhu has a question number 1.
No, Prabhu, your wife is first. Her hand is raised.
I'm sorry. Tulsi Priya.
Hi, Krishna.
Hare
So, when we were discussing this earlier, I was mentioning a verse, I couldn't remember exactly where it was, that says that the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities. And that was actually the previous verse, number 7. And there was so much to unpack there that I don't think I even really touched on that, and not that I could, but I was not quite clear on that, divided himself into the consciousness of the living entities, because we're supposed to be eternal. So I'm thinking that, Prabhupada is maybe extending from that verse to this one, saying that if the yogis see themselves as the super soul, or see the super soul as themselves, it's a minor point because it's all the Virat Rupa anyways. So I'm a little bit confused about this idea of the Virat Rupa dividing himself into the consciousness of the living entities if we're eternal and the Virat Rupa is temporary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that consciousness should already be there, in other words, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. And with this concept of the Virat Rupa being a temporary manifestation, well, if he's temporary, then what about us? If he's dividing himself into the consciousness of the living entities within that material universe, it's a bit confusing to me, and I don't know where to get further information unless it comes up in subsequent verses.
I haven't read about it. I wanted to see exactly where you're speaking from. I'm looking at the purport to text 7 now.
It's the verse itself.
The total energy, this is verse 7, total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself, I'm sorry, you've already read this, by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. I'm just checking now to see whether Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur might say something about that. No, he's very terse in his he presents it in a very different way too. I'll read his verse, his translation and purport actually for 367. This fetus, composed of the elements, endowed with Jiva Shakti, Prana Shakti, and Atma Shakti, divided itself up into 1, 10, and 3 parts by its own powers, brief purport, in order to produce the organs such as mouth on this form. First, the 3 Shaktis are described. This fetus, the result of the combined elements, was endowed with Jiva Prana and Adhyatma Shaktis. He divided himself up by himself. There's 1 Jiva Shakti, 10 Prana Shaktis, and 3 Atma Shaktis. So he talks about the fetus appearing as the Virat Rupa, because after all, we're in the universe, the Garbha, and so what's in a Garbha? The womb, but a fetus, although I couldn't find a directly correlating Sanskrit term for fetus. Still, I'm not getting any further clues as to the answer to your question, how that, how it divides himself into the consciousness of the living entities. That's not made clear here, so I can't comment on it. I could speculate, but who wants that?
The only thing I can think is that he's dividing himself, so to speak, as the super soul in the heart of every living entities.
Yeah. Because when, there's long discussion and plenty of support for the idea of the living entities, once they waken from their cosmic slumber and get back to business, fulfilling their desires, it's Krishna who reminds them what to do, in one sense, who gives them their consciousness of action. So I don't think it's contrary to our understanding of the jiva having his own individual permanent consciousness, that seems to be not a problem if we do as you say and understand that as the super soul again becoming an active feature. Because when the living entities are submerged in the body of Mahavishnu and they're not doing anything, we don't have any reason to expect that the super soul is active in their bodies. Although he may very well be there, there wouldn't be any life, but he's always with the living entity. So, if that approaches a better understanding, let me know.
Well, in one of Maharaj's last classes, I asked him, "Is there no mental life in the jivas in the body of Mahavishnu?" He says, "No, there's sushupti." That's the right word, sushupti.
Deep sleep, yes.
Yeah, deep sleep. So there's no mental life whatsoever. So I'm guessing if there's no mental life, then there's no reason for super soul to be telling them anything.
Right, because they just have to lie down. Anything more?
No, I would just, like to maybe bookmark this for future reference to ask Maharaj.
Sure.
See what he has to say about it.
Sure.
Or anybody else who wants to weigh in that might know.
Yeah, is there someone else? Please jump in. If not, I'll move to Vijay Krishna Prabhu's question number 1.
Thank you.
Right, well, I think you're on the right track with that, Akenda Prabhu. I just, when another Tulsi Prabhu brought those very good question up, I was looking at the purport, and Prabhupada seems to point to the very same things that you're saying. The total consciousness is that of the gigantic Virad Rupa, and the same consciousness is exhibited in individual persons. And then later on, he talks about how the conditioned soul is bewildered into various activities for want of pure consciousness. And the consciousness is one, according to Srila Prabhupada, when the soul is completely dovetailed in purpose with the Supreme Lord. So same ideas are described there.
So when he says the total consciousness, can we take that to mean like that the universe itself has a consciousness of its own?
Yeah, just like we're talking about the bacteria example. We've got our own consciousness. The little mites that are on the surface of your skin, they've got their consciousness. They're doing their thing.
Soul or individual. Oops.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and actually, going back just a little bit to maybe underline further what Panchatattva Prabhu was saying, he reminds us that Prabhupada says the consciousness is one in the purified state. I was thinking how when you have so many living entities, and they've all. Prabhupada quotes that verse Bahu Shaka Hyanantas Cha. In the material world, people's consciousness is all over the place because we're all here to gratify our own senses. But then you have a situation, for example, you're part of a temple, you're putting on a festival. There are a lot of different departments that have to be well manned, well planned, thought out, executed. And it's all one because you want Krishna to be glorified. You want the guests to have a good experience and all that. So that's all within the oneness of Krishna's desire. Right? So, let's see. Vijay Krishna Prabhu says, if the Lord is the self, capital S, of an unlimited number of living entities, and like Srila Prabhupada establishes in his purport, quote, everything created rests on the gigantic Virat, or universal form of the Lord, end quote, my question is, how should a devotee approach everything and everyone? Nowadays, the exploitative mood is being used as the normal, most intelligent mood. Is this the right mood? Are you asking if the exploitative mood is the right mood? No, I think that leads to misery, as we've all had bitter experience, I'm sure. I'm reminded of a story Jayādvaita Maharaj sometimes tells of Prabhupada speaking with Hayagriva in the temple room at 26 2nd Avenue early on, where Hayagriva Prabhu, he moves a new clock that's supposed to go on the wall. He moves it with his foot to the side, and Prabhupada says, you should never touch things with your feet. Hayagriva Prabhu says, are you saying that the clock is more holy than my foot? And Prabhupada said, yes. So a devotee, someone who's actually a devotee, like we're beginning today's discussion talking about how everywhere you look is Krishna's energy, and someone who's a devotee of Krishna sees Krishna everywhere and in everything, and he's not going to disrespect anything, whereas those of us who are less than pure devotees might get mad at inanimate objects sometimes and throw temper tantrums and things like that. Some of us may have bitter experience of that. So that doesn't lead to happiness. So the exploitative mood is being used as the normal, most intelligent mood. I think it's the least intelligent mood. Is this the right mood? Is that in the ballpark of addressing your question there, Prabhu?
Prabhu, as to be expected, very helpful, outstanding answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. And then Gurudas Prabhu says, Prabhupada rightly chastises the Mayavadi for actively accepting the Supreme Soul and the individual soul as one. But in one sense, can the poor Mayavadi be blamed? His object of study is the Sharirika Bhashya of Shankaracharya, whose avowed duty it is to mislead the living entities by establishing theories of impersonal oneness. Yes, the poor Mayavadi, in one sense, if he's a good Mayavadi, then he's following Shankaracharya and he's doing what he should be doing. But we have the benefit of higher knowledge, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared now in the world to set everything right, and you can either accept him or not, and we would call those who don't, and we would rank them as having a poor fund of knowledge. But yeah, I understand. Thank you for that. And also he says, this is Gurudas Prabhu, not just how powerful the material illusion is, what struck me with that is how strongly we desire that illusion. Yes, in one sense, the Lord need not make his illusory potency powerful and alluring, because we have already indicated to the Lord that we want to be mired in it. Yes, Krishna responds to the desires of the living being. He gives us the illusion that we can be an illusion in the first place, and we want it, and then we want more of it. It's like the, if you're shopping for one thing on Amazon.com, guess what you see millions of pictures of forevermore, thanks to cookies. Oh, you want that? Well, then you might be interested in this, and this, and this, and this. It's all based on desire. Saraswati Mata says, the powers gained from perfection of mystic yoga are extraordinary to the common person, including the power to expand into 9 separate forms. Therefore, with even this limited power, it's not too surprising to learn that mystic yogis consider the jivas and Paramatma to be one and the same. Yes, in one sense, gaining these powers can work against spiritual progress if it results in false pride and knowledge. For sure. Thank you very much for that. And Tulsi Priya says, Prabhupada also talks about the sun being reflected in multiple pots of water. One sun, but multiple individual reflections. Did you want to tease that out at any greater length, Tulsi Priya?
Just we were talking, we were reading about one consciousness. So there's one consciousness, one sun, and it's reflected in, or the other thing, the sun is in the sky and situated in its position, but everywhere you go, people say the sun is over my head, So it's still one sun, but everybody's seeing it, I mean, I don't know if that is an exact correspondence, but it seems, the basic principle is the same.
Yes, it is. And to further amplify what Saraswati Mata is saying, what to speak of the predicament you can get into by being a successful mystic yogi. The same thing on, you could say, a more gross level happens with someone who's a successful karmi. They get wealth, they get influence, they get attractive partners throwing themselves at them. That all makes you crazy. You start to think that you're God from that point of view, and that's on a much lower level of consciousness. And yeah, so certainly it's a very tough position to be in when you can you do all these things, perform magic tricks, bewilder everybody's mind, and then whoa, you see this vision of super soul. What does Prabhupada call that? The last snare of Maya? Hare Krishna. Tulsi Priya says, can the lotus-like devotees please post their questions so that everyone in the chat can see? Yes, thank you very much. Some of these are coming through as direct messages, but please post them so that everyone can see, because they're all so nice. Shall we move on to the next verse, or is there something more? Okay. Text 9. Sadhyatma sadhidayavascha sadhibhuta iti tridha virat prano dasha vidha ekadha hridayena cha. Sa'adhyatma, the body and mind with all the senses, sa'adhidaiva, and the controlling demigods of the senses, cha, and sa'adhibhuta, the present objectives, iti, thus, tridha, 3, virat, gigantic, prana, moving force, dasha vidha, 10 kinds, ekadha, one only, hridayena, living energy, cha, also. Thank you for posting that. And Prabhupada's translation, the gigantic universal form is represented by 3, 10, and 1, in the sense that he is the body and the mind and the senses. He is the dynamic force for all movements by 10 kinds of life energy, and he is the one heart where life energy is generated. Purport in Bhagavad Gita 7:4-5, it is stated that the 8 elements, earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, and false ego, are all products of the Lord's inferior energy, whereas the living entities who are seen to utilize the inferior energy originally belong to the superior energy, the internal potency of the Lord. The 8 inferior energies work grossly and subtly, whereas the superior energy works as the central generating force. This is experienced in the human body. The gross elements, namely earth, etc., form the external gross body and are like a coat, whereas the subtle mind and false ego act like the inner clothing of the body. So you may wake up, put on your inner clothing, and start going about your day. But if it's very cold or rainy outside, you may need to put on a coat temporarily to enable you to deal with the elements. And then when you come back from the elements, you take off the coat. But the inner clothing is the same throughout that. So the movements of the body are first generated from the heart, and all the activities of the body are made possible by the senses, powered by the 10 kinds of air within the body. And Prabhupada doesn't say exactly where he's drawing this list from, but here it is. The 10 kinds of air are described as follows. The main air passing through the nose in breathing is called prana. The air which passes through the rectum as evacuated bodily air is called apana. The air which adjusts the foodstuff within the stomach and which sometimes sounds as belching is called samana, or in English, borborygmus. The air which passes through the throat and the stoppage of which constitutes suffocation is called the udana air. And the total air which circulates throughout the entire body is called the vyana air. Subtler than these 5 airs, there are others also. That which facilitates the opening of the eyes, mouth, etc. is called naga air. The air which increases appetite is called krikara air. The air which helps contraction is called kurma air. The air which helps relaxation by opening the mouth wide in yawning is called devadatta air, and the air which helps sustenance is called dhananjaya air. And Srila Vishwanath has something to say about these different kinds of airs. One thing I thought was interesting about what he said is that, just a different wording really, that the dhananjaya causes nourishment. So in other words, all these other airs are working, and then when food comes into the system and then is digested, the air that arranges for that food to have its intended effect is dhananjaya. And devadatta causes yawning. Krikara causes hunger. Kurma causes eyes to open. Vyana moves everywhere and is located in the whole body. Samana causes assimilation of food and drink. Okay, so it's a little different. It's not one-to-one. He has a little different take on it. Anyway, 10 kinds of air. All these airs are generated from the center of the heart, which is one only. This central energy is superior energy of the Lord, who is seated within the heart with the soul of the body, who acts under the guidance of the Lord. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 15:15 as follows: Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mattah smitir jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvairaham eva vedyo vedanta krid veda videva chaham. The complete central force is generated from the heart by the Lord, who is seated there and who helps the conditioned soul in remembering and forgetting. The conditioned state is due to the soul's forgetfulness of his relationship of subordination to the Lord. I thought that sentence was particularly significant. I'll read it again. The conditioned state is due to the soul's forgetfulness of his relationship of subordination to the Lord. One who wants to continue to forget the Lord is helped by the Lord to forget him birth after birth. But one who remembers him by dint of association with a devotee of the Lord is helped to remember him more and more. Thus the conditioned soul can ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. We were having some discussion here about this verse prior to tonight's meeting, and especially this point of the conditioned state is due to the soul's forgetfulness of his relationship of subordination to the Lord. One of the points that came out is you can't actually do anything against Krishna. Krishna is one, and his energies are diverse. He manifests as living entities in order to have pastimes and relationships with them. So because he does like that, all of us have some minute degree of independence, which we can either use to our advantage or use in an improper way, because we can't do anything against Krishna. He's the supreme enjoyer. You can't change that. You can't, by some rebellious mentality, mess up the peaceful environment of the Vaikuntha planets. So if you have some desire that apparently is contrary to the Lord's desire for you to interact with him, he'll provide an illusory situation, and he'll put you in the illusion of your own illusion. So you're only hurting yourself ultimately by persisting with that. But he says one who wants to continue to forget the Lord is helped by the Lord to forget him birth after birth. So he's so magnanimous, he's so detached that he doesn't force himself on you. Okay, you want to forget me? I'll help you forget. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? Those who are envious and mischievous, I cast into the wombs of lower life forms so that they can go down, 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 and they don't have to think about me ever. If that's what they want, that's what they'll get. Meanwhile, the party in the spiritual world continues, unabated, no problem. And the person who wants to be an illusion gets a nice illusion. Thus, or by dint of association with the devotee of the Lord, the other kind of soul is helped to remember him more and more. Thus, the conditioned soul can ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. This process of transcendental help by the Lord is described in Bhagavad Gita 10.10 as follows: Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatang priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tang jena mam upayanti te. The buddhi yoga process of self-realization with intelligence transcendental to the mind, devotional service, can alone elevate one from the conditioned state of material entanglement in the cosmic construction. The conditioned state of the living entity is like that of a person who is within the depths of a huge mechanical arrangement. I highlighted that when I read it. I thought that was great. The conditioned state of the living entity is like that of a person who is within the depths of a huge mechanical arrangement. The mental speculators can reach the point of buddhi yoga after many, many lifetimes of speculation. But the intelligent person who begins from the platform of intelligence above the mind, he uses that very similar term once again here, intelligence above the mind, makes rapid progress in self-realization. So intelligence above the mind here, earlier he says intelligence transcendental to the mind. So intelligence is above the mind. The mind is the function that goes, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this. Even about the same thing, goes back and forth based on sense perception, basically. But intelligence is in the feature of the consciousness that drives long-term goal-directed activity, that I want a certain outcome, and I'm going to act toward that, no matter what the mind says. And so he says the mental speculators can reach the point of buddhi yoga after many, many lifetimes of speculation. But the intelligent person who begins from the platform of intelligence above the mind makes rapid progress. So it just saves so much time. I was listening to Prabhupada speaking, maybe, where was it? Oh, Los Angeles, 1968. He's talking about the different ways of getting knowledge, that sense perception, hearing from authority, or hypothesis. And essentially he's saying that the shabda, the process of just hearing from authority, is the most perfect, because only by that can you actually get perfect knowledge, because the senses are imperfect. You think you're looking at one thing, but what you're actually seeing is very different. Like the sun is about the size of a dime. If you hold up a dime, it can blot out the sun, but no, your senses are fooling you there. And your hypothesis is only as good as your mental power. And manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya hyupadruta. Good luck having good mental power in the Kali Yuga. Better to stick to the process of hearing from authority, if you want to save time. Because the buddhi yoga process entails no fear of deterioration or retrogression at any time. It is the guaranteed path to self-realization as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 240. Let's go there. Let's go to the Bhagavad Gita 240 and just see exactly what he's talking about there. And Tulsi Priya's right on it. Her computer's working faster than mine. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Yeah, so in today's purport, he says no retrogression. Like Satsvarup Maharaj one time asked Srila Prabhupada, knocked on his door at 26 Second Avenue in his apartment, and was asking Prabhupada, is there a level of spiritual realization that one does not fall down from? And Prabhupada said, yes. And that was a very defining moment, Satsvarup Maharaj said, in his building his faith in Krishna consciousness, that yes, there is, and he's referring to this verse right here, in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. And he says in the purport to 240, even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. We're reading now Shyamasundar Prabhu's book, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, Volume 2. And he made an interesting point. I'm sorry, we're in Volume 3 now. He was saying that it took a lot of very focused energy to travel with Prabhupada as long as he did. And it was not the sort of life that really just anybody could do, because you had to be on your toes. Prabhupada might turn on his dime, his travel plans might change, and any of Prabhupada's plans might change. You had to be willing to adjust to circumstances very quickly. But one feature of that life that Shyamasundar Prabhu had as Prabhupada's secretary was that, in his words, anything that needed to be done for Prabhupada, it always turned out successful. At least that was his experience. So that's what reminded me of here. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage, which ought to be very reassuring. All right, back to the 3.9. The mental speculators cannot understand that the two birds, Svatashvatara Upanishad, sitting in one tree are the soul and the supersoul. The individual soul eats the fruit of the tree, while the other bird does not eat the fruit, but only observes the activities of the eating bird. Without attachment, the witnessing bird helps the fruit-eating bird perform fruitful activities. I like how Prabhupada did that. One who cannot understand this difference between the soul and the supersoul, or God and the living entities, is certainly still in the entanglement of the cosmic machinery, and thus must still await the time when he will be free from bondage. So he winds up the purport to 9, seemingly echoing the end of the purport for 8, where he's talking about how the mystic yogis think that the soul and the supersoul are one, but it's not a big deal. They just have to wait. They have to wait longer than the bhakti yogis. Vijay Krishna Prabhu has question number 2. Why is it that without the association with a devotee of the Lord, I cannot remember the Lord? Why can't I, on my own, do it? Why is it that submission to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra are so indispensable for remembering the Lord? Am I so stupid that I cannot do it on my own? Well, Krishna says, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadeksyani te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. That's Krishna's recommended process for getting knowledge about him. He recommends that you find a devotee and follow the appropriate procedure. It's just, it's not a sad commentary on you. It's just part of the instruction manual that we're being given. That's how you do it.
So no matter how intelligent I am, I should follow this Krishna's instruction
Well, I think,
in order to succeed in spiritual life.
yeah, there's a interesting correlation between humility and advancing spiritual intelligence. That the more spiritually intelligent a person is, the more humble they become. You may see this with devotees who have been practicing Krishna consciousness for a very, very long time, that they seem to become more humble and lovable all the time. And at the same time, they're certainly becoming more intelligent.
And also they develop the mood of servant of the servant of the servant.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you very much. Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very much. Hare Krishna. Tulsi Priya?
Hi, Krishna. Well, I was just thinking, you were saying earlier that, if we don't want to be with Krishna or remember Krishna, Krishna enables us to forget him. So if Krishna enables us to forget him, how do we have the power to remember him? It's not that we cause ourselves to forget, it's that we have the desire to forget, and then Krishna makes us forget. And so how can we remember him again if Krishna has made us forget? We can only remember him if he allows us to. Or, we say that the devotees are even more merciful and they come to remind us. So it doesn't seem possible for us to remember, just like if you step off a completely smooth cliff, that's like practically infinite, you're not going to climb up to the top of the cliff by yourself again. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the Krishna consciousness movement, that Krishna's devotees, as my wife was saying, they're more merciful than Krishna. They're willing to go everywhere to remind people that do not want to be reminded that they have another life somewhere else, and they do not want to hear it, but they remind them anyway. I think I may have told the story before that during my first several visits to the temple, there was one devotee there who would go and distribute books in downtown Chicago every day. And one day when I came to the temple, I saw him and he had his jaw wired shut. So he was trying to remind someone about Krishna, and that person didn't like it at all and just hauled off and popped him one right in the face. And he had to drink his sabji in the form of a smoothie for a couple weeks. Oh, Haridas Prabhu has he adds something from, thank you very much, from Bhagavad Gita 10:10 purport. A person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization, but if he is still not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instructions so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. The qualification is that a person always engage himself in Krishna consciousness and with love and devotion render all kinds of services. He should perform some sort of work for Krishna, and that work should be with love. If a devotee is not intelligent enough to make progress on the path of self-realization, but is sincere and devoted to the activities of devotional service, the Lord gives him a chance to make progress and ultimately attain to him. Thank you so much, Haridas Prabhu. Tulsi Priya, is your hand up from before? You have something new? All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here and for giving my life some purpose. And is there someone who would like to lead tonight's closing kirtan?
Hello.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai. Thank you so much, Panchatattva Prabhu. Jai. Panchatattva Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srimad ki jai.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai.
Lord Premanande. Hari
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and
Hare Krishna.
You're most welcome.
look forward to hearing from Maharaj as far as his upcoming availabilities. And thank you for being here. Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you so much. Great.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Hare Krishna, all glories.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kendra Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Jai, Jai.
Thank you.
It was a great class, and I'm not biased.
Dope. All right. And with that, Hare Krishna.
Hari Hari Bol.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.